Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really big idea from billionaire investor Ray Dalio. He's convinced we are living through a massive economic shift, the kind of thing that only happens maybe once in a lifetime, and could totally redefine money and power as we know it.
You know, when you hear world leaders making comparisons to the Great Depression, that should make your ears perk up. It's a pretty clear signal that something huge is going on. This isn't just business as usual, it's a warning that some really radical, disruptive changes could be on the horizon.
So what is this changing world order that Dalio keeps talking about? Well, he describes it as this predictable, once-in-a-century shift in who holds the power on the global stage. And his whole argument is that we're not just getting close to one, we are right in the thick of it, and it's already affecting our economy, our politics, even the cash in our wallets.
Okay, so the core concept of Dalio's entire theory really boils down to this fascinating pattern he found throughout history, the rise and fall of the world's most dominant currencies, also known as reserve currencies.
For the last 80 years or so, that's been the US dollar. And I mean, just think about what that really means. It gives the United States this incredible economic superpower. The entire world basically needs our dollars to do business, which creates this huge demand for our currency and lets us borrow money way, way cheaper than anyone else.
What's so wild is that Dalio's research shows that pretty much every major economic power in history has gone through the exact same three-stage pattern. It kicks off with the rise, a time of peace, new ideas, and growing wealth. Then you get to the top, where things get more expensive and the country starts to lean really heavily on debt. And then finally comes the decline, which is almost always kicked off by a debt crisis that leads to, you guessed it, printing a ton of money to pay the bills.
And this is where history starts to look a little spooky. I mean, look at this. From Portugal to Spain to Great Britain, no reserve currency has really kept that #1 spot for much more than a century. The US dollar has been on top for over 80 years now, so history would suggest that this reign, well, it might just have a natural expiration date.
So the million-dollar question is, or maybe the trillion-dollar question, where are the signs that this is happening right now? Well, Dalio points to some pretty startling data that suggests the US is already deep into that third and final stage, the decline.
The first, and maybe biggest, warning sign is the debt. The US national debt is now at 122% of its entire annual economic output. So what does that actually mean? It just means we are spending and borrowing way more money than we're producing, and that is a textbook symptom of an empire in the late stages of its cycle.
And Dalio says this isn't just happening in a bubble. He sees it as its perfect storm, where four huge forces are all hitting us at the exact same time. You've got the massive debt, you've got extreme political fighting internally, you've got rising conflict with global powers like China, and then just a general breakdown of the old way of doing things around the world.
And listen, it's not just Ray Dalio who's sounding the alarm here. Another billionaire investor, Howard Marks, sees the exact same thing happening. He argues that this whole era of globalization, where we sent jobs overseas to get cheaper stuff, is now going in reverse. And he warns that this reversal could mean higher inflation and a much bumpier ride in the markets for a long time to come.
Okay, so now let's turn to the bond market, because it can act like a canary in a coal mine for the whole economy. And this is where the theory really starts to hit the pavement, because the market for US government debt just did something it hasn't done in decades.
Right, so here's the weird thing. For decades, it was like clockwork. When the stock market went down, investors would rush to the safety of US government bonds. But just recently, something completely bizarre happened. The stock market fell, and investors also started selling off their US bonds. Both went down together.
That is a massive shift. I mean, think about it. It suggests that for the first time, investors all over the world are starting to second-guess if the US is really the ultimate safe place to park their money. It's a huge crack in the very foundation of the dollar's power.
Okay, so you're hearing all of this, and it's pointing to a potentially historic shift in the world. What's the big takeaway here? What does any of this actually mean for you and your money?
So the first and I think most important thing to remember is don't panic. These giant shifts in the world order can take decades to actually play out. Making sudden emotional decisions is usually the worst thing you can possibly do. The focus really should be on preparation, on building a financial plan that's tough enough to handle a more volatile and uncertain future.
Now, I have to say this very clearly. This is not financial advice. But the source material does give an example of what a more diversified strategy could look like. It's about spreading your investments across US stocks,
international stocks, and other kinds of assets, like treasuries or even a Bitcoin ETF. The idea is really simple, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket, or in this case, in just one country's currency. At the end of the day, these are enormous, really complex forces at work, and nobody can predict exactly how it's all going to shake out. But just understanding the historical patterns and recognizing the warning signs we see today, that's the crucial first step. It's all about being aware and being prepared to navigate the monumental changes that might be just around the corner.